from the News Channel 5 network. This is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. Glad you're with us tonight. We have an important discussion. It's something I've been covering for a long time, talking about how some of these Wall Street-backed companies, real estate investment firms, are buying up single-family homes in Middle Tennessee. They're buying up land in Middle Tennessee, and they are building or turning these homes into rental homes. I'm talking about companies like American Homes for Rent or Invitation Homes. There's several of them. They're backed with Wall Street money. They have tons of cash, and they come in. They first were coming into neighborhoods, and they were buying up single-family homes left and right. And some HOAs got concerned about that, and they did some things to kind of stall that. We are still a hot market. We're still a market where people are moving. And so now what they're doing is they're buying land and they're building entire rental communities. Now, there are concerns with this. Some people are worried about it takes away the number of affordable housing units that are available. So these are the kind of things we're going to talk about. And I'm very happy to have with us somebody, well, two people who know all about it. First, Dr. Ken Chilton from TSU. He's been in almost every story I've done, really has followed this. He's also written several articles in the Tennessean about it. So Ken Chilton, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And Councilwoman Tanaka Vercher, Metro Council member, and you were in the last story that I did. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for bringing this to the forefront and this bringing awareness to the entire community regarding this issue.
So I interviewed you about a very specific situation that we'll get to. I know you can also talk about the big picture, but Dr. Chilton, let's start with you. Big picture, what are we seeing in Middle Tennessee? Kind of what's been happening over the last several years?
Yeah, the single-family rental has always been part of Americana, right? Mom and pop own a house, they rent it out. But starting around 2011, 2012, national investment funds that are organized as what are called real estate investment trusts started buying up large pools of properties after the foreclosure crisis. So they focused primarily on fast-growing markets in the Southwest, in the South and Southeast. And they've accumulated to date over 250 to 300,000 single-family homes in those markets alone, okay? Over the last couple of years, as competition in the for housing has increased, and as prices have recovered, the old model of picking up foreclosed homes is not the best model for growing their portfolio. So as you mentioned, they have started to buy up or partner with national developers to build entire build-to-rent communities, which are in perpetuity going to be rental companies for as long as these companies, rental homes for as long as these rental companies control them. Now, they are set up specifically as REITs for a financial advantage. REITs have a tax advantage in that this money is pooled, investors buy up stakes, if you will, or stocks, and 90% of their earnings go back to dividends for stockholders. So there's an incentive to grow the portfolio to keep those earnings going, and then they don't pay corporate taxes because of that. And then there's also an incentive to grow the number of homes. So now we're looking at an affordability crisis in Nashville that's been contributed to by these firms in the sense that there's over 7,300 homes owned by these companies in the Nashville region. You can imagine the impact of having 7,300 additional homes on the market that could be owner occupied. So, and those rent anywhere from $1,800 to $2,200 a month. They target college-educated households with household incomes above $70,000. This is not low-income housing, and they use a lot of fees in their business model to get additional funds from renters. One additional side effect is that their business model is based on cost of living adjustments. Most renters sign a one-year lease, and every year you are expected to have a 3 to 5% rent increase. So that puts pressure on the overall rental market as well to drive up rents and to have more corporate styled leases for tenants that are much more punitive.
You followed this, and I'm going to ask a question to the Councilwoman right after this. But where are the areas this is happening, in Middle Tennessee and in Davidson County? Where are we seeing this?
There's over 3,300 homes in Murfreesboro or in Rutherford County. If you go along the I-24 corridor from Antioch through Laverne, Smyrna, up to Murfreesboro, you're looking at about over 60% of those. In Davidson County, the majority of those are in the Antioch area as well. Probably about 40 to 50% of the homes are in that kind of along the border of I-24 and the county line.
And so, Councilwoman, you represent part of the Antioch area. And what have you seen, and what are your concerns?
Well, my primary concern is that, really over the last decade or so, the Southeast delegation, we've worked extremely hard to ensure that we had a diversification in our housing stock, because that was one of the main variables that retail was providing to us. They said we need a diversification in housing stock. We got that. So now to have this new model come in and essentially, disrupt our housing ecosystem is very damaging. And the seriousness of this is what the public needs to be aware of. It changes the entire socioeconomic status for a community. And what I'm saying here, Ben, is that we know home ownership is a gateway to wealth. And this isn't about being anti-rental, because, I started out as a rental, but we don't want to create these communities and keep communities in the cycle of just being renters. We want to have housing supply where our renters can move to home ownership and therefore begin wealth for their families. With this new model that's really beginning to saturate our community, our middle income families and our professional families, our teachers, they are having a real challenge in purchasing homes, not because of credit. So I want to dispel that. It's not because of credit. It's simply they are being outbidded. This entity, they come in and offer cash way beyond asking, and no family can compete with a $1 billion entity. And I foresee this really being not just catastrophic in our housing market out in Southeast, but catastrophic for the housing market for the entire region.
So that's major. You're saying it's saturated that area, and you're saying words like catastrophic. It's interesting how this has evolved, and Ken Chilton talked a little bit about that. At first, they were buying up single-family homes in neighborhoods, and I did a story, and it would show neighborhoods where many homes in that neighborhood were bought by one of these companies. Then the HOAs kind of caught up to that, didn't they? Did HOAs fight back, and are you seeing something different now, or what about that?
Yes, I'm on my HOA's board, and we began these conversations many years ago. What's happened is that this has really gone up under the radar. Like, we knew it was an issue. We just didn't understand the magnitude of it. When it was brought to the attention of many HOAs, this entity, they would purchase a couple of homes in a subdivision. We never saw them actually purchasing entire subdivisions with the only intent for the occupants to be renters. I think, and I can't thank you enough, Ben, just for bringing this to the public, because this is very serious. And as a policymaker, what we need to do, we really need to get ahead of this, and it begins with our planning and our land use policies, because what we're doing, what's currently on the books, it allows for this to happen.
And Ken Chilton, you've looked at other communities. All right, once we start talking about land use and that kind of thing, it can get a little complicated. But what do you think we need to do? So you hear the council person saying, and that's kind of one solution here. What do you think? How does that work?
Yeah, there have been efforts, or there are fledgling efforts in some communities. I know in Clayton, Georgia, there's attempts now to design legislation to regulate these companies and ownership. Also, Charlotte, there are council members. Charlotte has about 10 to 12,000 single-family rentals that have been bought up by these Wall Street owners as well. So they're starting to get some movement. However, they are zoned as single-family rental homes. This is a new industry, and like sometimes trends driven by technology, and these are technology-driven businesses, kind of outpace our regulations. So when you see a build-to-rent permanent renter neighborhood, it's not a traditional single-family rental neighborhood, and it's not a traditional multifamily apartment type neighborhood. So, but there are some things in the way the infrastructure is designed, the way that they bill for utilities, and the way that they build out with shared driveways and such, that is different than traditional single-family rental. I just think that leaders in planning and zoning need to re-examine the build-to-rent classification, whatever that should be, look for best practices across the country and figure out what they are and how they should be zoned. And when they go to a community, they need to be transparent about what the end use is going to be.
And we'll talk more about how we may or may not be able to do that. There's certainly questions about fair housing and that kind of thing, and I want to talk about that. But I got a statement from American Homes for Rent, one of these real estate investment trusts, and one that I did a story on recently. And they were talking big picture, and that is what I'll read here. And they say, in an undersupplied market, we are providing beautiful single-family rental homes in vibrant, well-located neighborhoods. And they said our homes have the added benefits of lawn care and various other amenities. And basically, people are choosing, they would rather have the convenience of renting than have the burdens of home ownership. And so, Councilwoman, that's kind of what they're saying, that people want this. This is kind of where things are going. And you don't have to worry about cutting your lawn, or if your roof goes out, you don't have to worry about replacing your roof. This is what people want.
That's all according to their PR, right? I do know that there are people who are lifestyle renters. Typically, they're more in the urban neighborhoods. They want to be near downtown. I don't think a lot of people are relocating to Smyrna and Laverne because they desire rentership. They can say that. I have not seen any data to support that. I think if we did a survey of people in those communities and asked them if they'd rather spend $1,800 plus the fees for the lawn service, plus the fees for the pets, plus the fees for the filters for their air conditioners and heaters, if they'd rather spend about $2,200 a month owning a home or renting a home, I think the majority would choose owning a home.
And Councilwoman, what do you think about what I read there, that part of their statement, American Homes for Rent?
Ben, that's outright just lies, okay? We live in the suburbs, and as Dr. Chilton stated, we move out there with the intent of home ownership. That's why we move out there. When we move out to the suburbs, professionals such as myself, we're looking to raise our families. We're looking at the schools. We're looking at the amenities and so forth. We're looking to really plant down roots and to put our families on that trajectory of wealth. I can't stress enough that the socioeconomic impact that this is going to have on a community. Just if we just take away the transient nature of many renters, because what's going to happen is with this cycle, as Dr. Chilton alluded to earlier, their rent isn't going to stay the same. They're going to increase the rent year after year after year after year. So at some point, even these homes aren't going to be ideal for the renters today. So what that does, that creates continued turnover in the community, in the neighborhood, in the schools. It adds uncertainty to the business market. So I go back to this. This is really serious. This is a really serious issue here that everyone needs to be at the table and discussing it. And we can't keep planning like how we've been planning. And I've been saying this every year I've been on council. So we can't keep doing it.
We can't keep doing it. And all right, we'll talk about that. I want to ask one other question to Dr. Chilton about the money that is going out of this community instead of staying in it. I interviewed you one time and you kind of calculated. Go through that. Maybe not in detail, but I mean, we're talking about there's a lot of money that's not going in here in our community. Is that right?
Yeah. If you've got 3,000 or 7,000 homes that are paying about $2,000 a month in rent and fees, I mean, that's $14 million per month. You do the math, it adds up to about $168 million a year going back to these REITs that are then distributed as dividends to investors throughout the country. Doesn't have a lot of impact on the local community and positive economic impact. And I've used the term of equity mining, that these companies are mining equity that hardworking households and families, middle-income families, professional families in Tennessee would like to be able to do themselves, but they can't compete with them.
And so, Councilwoman, what do you mean when you say, all right, what do we need to do? Because again, I think, you know, if you have land, you ought to be able to do what you want with your land. And so someone has land, they could sell it, I guess, to American Homes for Rent for the top dollar, or they could build rental properties. Once you start, you know, putting these regulations on, people start getting a little concerned. But what can be done about this?
Right. So we don't want to over-regulate because we already know that the housing to create housing supply is already slow. So what Dr. Chilton was talking about with the equity mining, you know, many of the decisions is made down at the Planning Commission with the lens of using the Nashville Next. One of the core principles in Nashville Next is preserving neighborhoods and equity. And you can't have equity if you don't have the opportunity for choice. So with this new model, it's removing choices from families, because as a potential home buyer, I'm not afforded the choice in the community that I'm trying to move in, to build wealth in, to invest in, because I can't outbid a multi-billion dollar entity. And I know many is going to say that this is about property rights. This really isn't about property rights. This is about, one, just being transparent in the process, and two, ensuring that we're looking at our land development and our land practices with an equity lens. And we do not do that. If we had been looking at it with an equity lens, we wouldn't be having this conversation today, because we know the data is already telling us that disproportionately they are targeting the Southeast quadrant. Why not take this model to another area that has a much higher median income? They won't, because they understand what they're doing as it relates to crippling a community and keeping them where they are as it relates to their social economic status. And that's not equity, and that's not the Nashville way.
We did a story just maybe a couple of weeks ago, and you were interviewed in that story. Well, you both were. And Councilwoman, you said it was a bait and switch for the neighborhood.
Yes.
That was the term you used. What we were talking about was a tract of land that it had been agricultural, and then someone bought it and they asked to get it rezoned, and it was rezoned for single family residential. And then that person said, right? That person said, we're going to build some nice homes on there, and they showed some pictures of the homes they're going to build, and there was a concept plan. Points. Yeah, yeah. They had pictures, and they had a concept plan that was approved by the Planning Commission. Then it was sold, and and it was sold to American Homes for Rent. And instead of homes that were going to be owned by individuals, it then became a rental community. American Homes for Rent came in, built single-family residential homes, so it still met that zoning requirement, but these are going to be rental homes as opposed to owner-occupied homes. And so is that your big concern? And that's what you want to try and, I guess when you say people have a right to know, you want some other designation. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on some legislation now as it relates to that. But really, just fundamentally, at the end of the day, this was a breakdown in our planning process, because although the property changed hands, changed ownership, the scope, the concept of the project dramatically changed. So what happened is that this community never had an opportunity to weigh in on the new concept with the new owner. Initially, when this, and I was in those meetings when this was presented, every developer that comes to our community, that's one of the first things that we ask. Not that we are an anti-rental community, it's because we know strong, sustainable communities, you have to have that balance of home ownership as well, too. With this particular development, they never came back to the community. And what's really disheartening is that our planning commission, they don't even look at this as part of their review.
No, I talked to the planning commission, and they said land gets sold all the time. And it was rezoned for single-family residential, and they were going to be owner-occupied, but then it became renter-occupied. That's still single-family residential, and so there was no need to go back before the community.
It's a change in the concept, and that's what I go back to. Like, we can't keep saying keep doing in practice just the least path of resistance. At some point, if we're really going to be serious about equity as it relates to our housing market here in Nashville, they need to be reviewing those sort of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was a substantive change, Ben.
Yeah.
And while it wasn't technically illegal, the build-to-rent concept, the way that American Homes for Rent is using it, is only 2 or 3 years old. And so we don't have a lot of experience with it. And as I said earlier, I think it's incumbent upon the planning and zoning to look at what's going on nationwide and figure out exactly what these are, how they need to be treated, if they need to be treated differently, and look at what other communities might be doing to regulate them better.
All right. Well, that kind of sets the table of what we're going to talk about. We go a little more. We really set the table. But that was a very good first discussion here. And now we'll open up the phone lines. If you want to call in.
Yeah, we're eating.
615. Yeah, we might be eating, actually. Yeah. 615-737-PLUS. 615-737-7587. Give us a call. Tell us your thoughts. Take a break. Be back right after this.